Hi, everybody. So, I've been getting all sorts of questions about the Gospels and the Q Gospel. So, there's been questions about Mark and Luke and Matthew and John's Gospel, which is considered a signs gospel. And if you want to look at it through a historical lens, all the sources are hypothetical, but they do help to explain how the New Testament was woven together. And you have to look at second century tradition that said that the Gospels were actually written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And that seems spurious, especially in light of modern knowledge. We now know that the Gospels were originally anonymous, and it would be very unlikely that they were written by any of the persons after whom they were eventually named. So if you start to look at the original Greek language, you're going to notice that the Gospels of Matthew and Luke were essentially based on Mark's Gospel. And when you lay them down in parallel and read them in the original Greek language, it's clear that there is a firm literary relationship amongst them. If you go into technical analysis, this will confirm it more. There are apps that one can use these days to use with transliteration and picking up particular words, verbs, nouns, pronouns, so on. So, Mark's Gospel, you cannot look at Mark's Gospel and read it and then read Matthew and Luke and see where Matthew and Luke are in concurrence again and again and again. So that's where the hypothetical Q source gospel comes in. And the majority of New Testament scholars, those who were well versed in the theology of New Testament, say that there had to be a Q, and it was connected to the Gospel of Thomas. And these were used as primary sources by both the authors of Luke and Matthew. So one can argue that reconstructing a document that no longer exists is impossible, but it's not. It's not. You can forensically look at the close similarities in the wording of parallel passages in Luke and in Matthew, and you need to understand that it's a fact that the two evangelists always wrote their parallel passages in the same order. So there's a chronology to the writing. There are derivations in the words. Luke's gospel, and Luke was a doctor and a scientist, is usually closer to the original than Matthew's gospel. So Q had to be the source. And in the last 100 years, there's been maybe 13, 14 different reconstructions of Q. But none of them have been accepted by scientific peers as representing the original document. You need to look at John S. Kloppenborg's work. It's Kloppenborg. And he believes that the Q Gospel was developed over time. It was layered. He published a book called The Critical Edition of Q, synopsis including the Gospels of Matthew, Luke, Mark, and Thomas, and he had English, German, and French translations. He did that in conjunction with a man named Paul Hoffman and a man named James M. Robinson. A very interesting book. I've studied it very closely. There's a lot of speculative aspects in it, but I don't think that they're all listening to each other. And I think that there are areas in the world that they're not looking at that they should be looking at. So we'll get more into that later. But when people say Q, today they think political, they think Trump supporters, they think the QAnon phenomenon. It's actually much older than that. Q is most certainly the primary source for all four Gospels. This is my belief, And how did I get there? Because I doubted things and I studied things. That's what I do. Everybody knows I'm a bibliophile and a pianist. So that's that. But I hope that you guys are having a good evening and that your holidays are not too stressful. We've got a lot of things going on in the world. I think it's going to be okay. I really do. I don't think that the American people are going to stand to be silenced and to have their rights to free speech, their First and their Fourth Amendments, trampled on. So that's all I have to say about that. Let's see what happens. Enjoy the show.